And welcome to Candidates Corner on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Whitney Billieux serving as chair. As always, John Gapso is on the big board tonight. He'll bring you the maps and the graphics and the newspaper articles, the embarrassing prom pictures, anything that we can provide to liven up the show a little bit. I'm your host, Pat Ford, and I am very proud now for almost a year and a half to have been your host on the show, speaking with, as we call them, the degree of reverence, by the way, down ballot candidates around the country. As always, there's a few purposes for the show. We want to give the Libertarian Party an opportunity to meet our down ballot candidates. You know, the closer to the community level, the better. We love Board of Education candidates. We love Water Board candidates. We love town auditor candidates. We love councilmen, aldermen, you name it. That's our jam here. When we meet these candidates, we want to challenge them to incorporate what we call lunch pail issues, the issues that affect their community, specifically their job, and view them through a libertarian perspective. And of equal importance, we look to create a bond, a recognition that around the country, candidates, whether they be in Minnesota, Maine, California, bear an equal importance to other affiliates around the nation. As we always say, very often these candidates, particularly right now, are not only the first libertarian candidates that many of these electorates will have seen, in many cases it might even be the first libertarian they've met. And so with this awesome responsibility comes also awesome opportunity to share our philosophy, our statement of principles, our message to a nation that is desperately seeking alternatives to the failed duopoly that has brought this nation to its heels through the COVID crisis. Personally, I refer to COVID, and this, I hope this isn't glib, but as sort of proof of concept for the libertarian philosophy, that the strength of the individual, binding together in community, stewarding, not governing, but stewarding community assets is critical to our support of the ultimate minority, and that is, of course, the individual. Well, joining us tonight, he's running to be the mayor of Bensalem Township in Pennsylvania, is Tim Main. Tim, thanks for joining us tonight.
Good evening, Pat.
Now, Tim, I just want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, and included that, you know, what you do, where you're from, but part and parcel of that is the question that I ask every week. At what moment in your life's journey did you realize that little light bulb went over your head and said, uh-oh, I'm a libertarian?
Yeah, that is a good question. So first, a little bit about myself. My name is Timothy Main. I am a Philadelphia native. I moved to Bensalem 12 years ago, and I've been living in Bensalem ever since. And it's a nice township. I love it, and really happy to live here. When did I become a libertarian? Well, I'd have to say that basically in college is when I started really seeing the signs of liberty and, you know, preserving freedom and whatnot. And so what I did is I joined the Constitution Party. And I was in that party for a while, but it wasn't quite the right fit for me. So I had a friend who ran for Congress, actually, on the Libertarian Party. His name is Edward Clifford. He ran quite a few, 8 years back, something like that. I'm not sure the exact year. And so I got to talking to him about it. You know, well, what is libertarianism? And he's like, well, it's this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I believe that. Yeah, I go with that. And so that's sort of when it clicked with me. And I then changed my party affiliation to Libertarian. I found that there was the local Libertarian committee here in Bucks County last year. I got in contact with them, and I joined them, and I got involved with them. And they've been a great asset, and I look to expand that going forward.
Excellent. Now, where did you go to school?
I went to school, I went to college at LaSalle University here in Philadelphia. I got my bachelor's degree in information technology, so I'm a computer IT admin for a small company. And,
now, whenever we meet people from Pennsylvania, we want to know, particularly the Philadelphia area, We want to know under which mayor did they live? Were you a Wilson Good kind of guy? Do you go all the way back to Rizzo's Raiders? Who was in charge when you were there? Do you remember?
There was Ed Randell is the
Oh, of
earliest
course.
one I remember. I mean, I know there were some before that when I was too young to remember, but Ed Randell is the first one I remember.
All right. And what was it about Philadelphia politics? I mean, you're in your formative years. I mean, college for a young person is their opportunity to explore politically. What was your impression of Philadelphia politics if you were kind of soaking it in?
Well, back then, I say that I got my drive for liberty back then because back then I kept seeing, they're spending money like crazy, like it's going out of style, and nothing's getting better. Things are getting worse. The more money they spend, the worse things seem to get. And it's like, well, why are they spending all this money? You need some sort of fiscal responsibility, I guess, because I would say, or when I got into it, I started to say, imagine taking your checkbook and like writing out checks for $100, but you're only bringing in, $50, sending out dimes when you're bringing in nickels. And so that was part of it. And then beyond that was things like, the war on drugs that has done nothing but create more criminals, more people for the system.
Well, talk to us about Bensalem because in a sense, I would imagine it's very easy to get the identity confused with Philadelphia. But I've been in Bensalem, and as I mentioned, I've spent a lot of time in North Philly. What are people concerned with there? We talk about lunch bell issues. You go back to the Clinton era, and his saying was, "Well, it was the economy, stupid," and the Republicans at the time didn't realize that. But my sense, different parts of the country, as I speak to different candidates, is by and large, that's what it is right now. But what matters to the people and the voters of Bensalem?
Well, in Bensalem has always been a town where a lot of business came to. So, I mean, people would get out of the city and they'd come to Bensalem. They'd have their businesses here because, the city would overtax and charge companies just to operate in there. Bensalem has always been this hub of business. And it seems like in recent years, like for instance, the street road corridor, you got a lot of businesses along there that the parking lots are terrible. The businesses are starting to look like Philadelphia, really, like, starting to get in that not quite dilapidated, but starting to show signs where we need to revitalize, we need to rethink and come up with a better way to bring businesses back. I know that in looking at my competitors, if you will, the Democrat who's running, she was asked, well, what would she do to help revitalize business in Bensalem or help, increase business in Bensalem? And she wants to create a government commission. So that's trying to solve a problem by creating more government. And
Excellent.
As libertarians, we know, when has government ever made business? When has government ever helped more government? You want to decrease government. You want to get government out of the way to allow businesses to thrive. So one of the things that I'd like to do, if elected, is investigate ways where we can get rid of regulations that are unnecessary, get rid of taxes on businesses that are not necessary to, bring these businesses back, build these businesses up, especially in today's world with the COVID situation and Governor Wolf shutting down businesses in Pennsylvania under the guise of non-life sustaining. I mean, how dare he tell businesses that they're non-life sustaining? Anybody who works and has a business, it's sustaining somebody. I mean, it's giving them a pay. They have to buy food for their family, so it's sustaining them. So how dare he tell businesses that they're non-life sustaining?
Right. The combined naivete and arrogance at the same time is a pretty heady mix of most state level officials in this country. Isn't connected to reality. And ultimately, one of the challenges we face, I'd love your opinion on this, as a younger person, is that we've got folks now who are literally bred to be politicians. And what I mean by that is they go to high school and they're in the government club and they're this and that, and they go to college and they major in history or government or some such stuff, and then they go out to graduate school, and then they get a job, typically working for a congressman and or one of the think tanks at the entry level, and they get to a job with a regular, and essentially they've got no real world perspective, and has never worked in what we lovingly refer to here as the dreaded private sector.
Yep.
And how can you? And I'll always reflect on a young man who ran for state senate and ended up as the Senate president, and his first in Rhode Island, where I live, and his first appointment was to the Small Business Committee. And how can you possibly be on a senatorial small business committee when you've never, in fact, at any point in your life, worked in a small business?
That is incredibly true. Where I work, for instance, we're a small business. We service the printing industry. The printing industry is huge. I mean, you got printed packages such as your food packaging, your medical devices are printed, and even food itself, like the M&Ms have the M's printed on them. When you have those type of industries that people rely on for the basic human needs, a small business that some governor may think, oh, that business doesn't matter, that business is non-life sustaining. Well, if they had shut us down, they would have shut down bigger companies because we couldn't create the product that they need in order for them to operate. See, especially these Democrat governors in this whole pandemic, they don't understand supply chain, and they've shown that they don't understand supply chain.
Yeah, and the smallest company can be an incredibly important cog in that supply chain.
Yep.
It's that one little fracture, that one chip at the foundation. You talk about the butterfly effect. I mean, it's happening everywhere, and their stupidity and arrogance about how business actually conducts itself. Again, the Jen Psaki, how possibly raising taxes could raise costs for consumers? How dare they infer such madness?
Yeah, I mean, you have the president's own press secretary saying, how dare people raise prices and all. Well, if you're raising taxes and raising costs through inflation on the business, you expect them to eat that for the whole time? I mean, eventually it's got to go down the line.
Yeah, it's madness. Now, being that close to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia's got some wonderful areas, some wonderful universities. A lot of folks don't realize the degree with which it is a college university town. You went to LaSalle, which is a great school, Penn, Drexel, which we affectionately refer to as Drek Tech. Some great schools. But at the same time, it's like many cities in the Northeast, it's troubled. Pension issues, budget issues, urban flight, crime, criminal justice. How much does that bleed into, both on a real level and a perceived level, into the fortunes of, say, a Bensalem Township?
Well, luckily, I mean, Bensalem does have a very calm demeanor. I mean, they have a good police force as far as being able to crack down on that type of crime, if you will. But we also have the buffer zone, if you will, of Northeast Philadelphia, which is more of a suburb of its own city. So, I mean, we don't really see the rampant crime as much as, say, Philadelphia, like the heart of Philadelphia, like where LaSalle was. That was Olney section of Philadelphia. So we don't really see the stuff like we do there and in Kensington and all. But it is a relatively calm neighborhood, a relatively protected neighborhood.
Right. What industry is most prominent in Bensalem?
Well, we do have a lot of manufacturing here in Bensalem, and we also have a lot of trucking companies in Bensalem. I know, like Estes has a place here, and Ward Trucking and YRC. So we do have a lot of trucking and a lot of manufacturing over in the industrial park, which is off of Humeville Road. And over by the post office there.
What type of pressure does that put on Bensalem in terms of how it handles its road, its infrastructure? Well, and generally speaking, what shape is the budget in as far as the town goes?
Well, as far as the roads and all, I mean, yeah, maintaining the roads is very important. I know that they just were paving some of the roads over by the industrial park and all, which is always good to see. Now, as far as the budget goes, one of the things that I do want to do when, if elected, is start uh, an audit process, basically, and investigate exactly where every penny is going, and all just to make sure that there isn't an inflated budget and all. So the budget is relatively high. I mean, and it's broken down, but I do want to see it broken down and fully transparent as far as where every penny is going.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of where your dominant share of taxable income is coming from, is it property tax driven? Is there revenue sharing with the state? How do you fund stuff? How do you pay for stuff?
Well, there is the property tax, and Bensalem did institute an EIT recently, a 1% tax on all earned income. I know in Pennsylvania right now, the people that work outside of Bensalem and pay an EIT already, they don't pay to Bensalem. But for instance, where I work, they don't collect the tax. I have to pay 1% of my gross income rather to Bensalem Township for the EIT. Property taxes, like I said, are another big source that once the audit is complete, we might be able to investigate if we can reduce that, if we can help.
What was it? Now, you say this is recent in the last few years. What was the community's reaction to essentially establishing another layer of income tax on top of onerous Pennsylvania state taxes, and then, of course, on top of your contribution to your federal family?
Yeah, I know for me, I was not happy, to say the very least. As you said, I got to pay another tax on top of the state, on top of the federal, on top of Medicare and Social Security. I mean, there are so many layers of tax and all, and then on top of it, it was hard to wrap my head around. I mean, granted, it's only 1%, but that's 1% that I could be using to feed my family. That's 1% that I could be using to buy necessities. So, I mean, I know if I'm feeling this way, there are others out there that are feeling the same.
And I want you to know that when I get my first Social Security check, being a little older than you, I'll think of you and I'll think well of you. And, it's because sorry, call me a gloomy kind of guy. The chances of your generation realizing anything out of Social Security, I have to believe, is nearly nil.
I agree with you completely, which is why I have my own retirement fund that I'm starting to work on and things now while I'm still young.
Absolutely. Now, very often, the most controversial aspect of any municipality is always going to be the school budget. And in Bensalem, are schools, for example, is there a school board, and are they elected or are they appointed?
There is a school board. It is elected, and they are facing some elections this year as far as some of the positions go.
Right. And does their budget, is it arrived at separately and they just hand the bill to the town, or does the town have any level of involvement, in terms of town government, I should say, in the school budget process?
To be perfectly honest, I'm not 100% sure how it's derived. I know that they do come up with some of the budgetary concerns and all, but I'm not sure how much input the township has directly.
Okay. And how are the schools regarded, in terms of, and it's interesting, I always talk about the real estate agent effect. You'll go to someone in town and you'll say, hey, how are the schools? And they'll say, wow, they're great. They're super. Really? Yeah. Do you have children in schools? Not yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Oh, so how do you know they're great? Well, my real estate agent told me. And I say, what did you expect you're going to say? Are 400 large? The schools suck? I doubt it. But how are the schools, and is it, are they moving in the right direction? Is there elements or support for homeschooling or any type of school choice?
Well, I mean, the schools are pretty well regarded here in Bensalem. They do perform admirably by the metrics that I've seen and heard. But I mean, as you said, the real estate agent effect. I being that I don't have any children in school, I don't have any direct impact as far as feedback from the school. So I can't speak exactly to how they are directly. So beyond that, I mean, School choice, I mean, I know there is always people that are interested in school choice. I am definitely a supporter of school choice. I think that people should have the opportunity to send their children where they would like to send them, or even homeschool them if they so choose. Uh, even if a township has the best schooling, that doesn't negate the parents' ability to decide what's best for their own children.
Right. The Are you in a local only school district, or do you guys do the regional thing?
I believe the schools are local only. Again, being that I don't have children directly, I don't know exactly, but I believe that there are local only district type schools, because there are many schools. I mean, it seems like there's one high school that I know of in Bensalem, but there are many different middle schools and elementary schools.
Okay. Criminal justice. Let's talk criminal justice. The Popo, Leo, um, 5-0. I'm old enough. At one point or another, one of those acronyms or one of those slang terms applied. I guess right now, I think it's still the Popo. What's the relationship like with the community? And is there room for growth? Is there much strife, or has there been issues in terms of the community's relationship with police?
As far as my interactions and what I know about the police, I feel that the township in general has had a very positive interaction with the police force here in Bensalem. I don't know of many negative impacts. I don't know of any actually negative impacts off the top of my head here, but yeah, I mean it's a very positive relationship here. They're not overly aggressive. They're not the type to willy-nilly just stop and do whatever they want, like you see in some of the inner city areas.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of COVID, what was it a community-driven response? Is there mandatory masking, or does the community dictate it, or do they look to the direction of the Pennsylvania Department of Health, the Commonwealth, the government, state government?
It seems like well, first of all, when the governor had the mask mandate, they did abide by it. But as far as since that has been lifted, it's been sort of a 50-50 mixed bag as far as different businesses requiring it versus some that don't. But most of them are following the state guideline where people that are fully vaccinated, they're not requiring them to wear masks, and people that aren't vaccinated, they're technically requiring them, but they're not carding people. So, I mean, it's very positive in that respect, because I definitely hate to see COVID passports become a thing here, like they are internationally.
Did the townships follow the state's lead in terms of business closures?
As far as I know, they did. Most of the businesses that were under Governor Wolf's non-life sustaining industry were closed. Ones that may have remained open in defiance, I don't think were supported or were not supported, but not endorsed by the township to do so.
Right. Okay. Property taxes. We mentioned them briefly. Are you aware of what the general? I mean, for example, a standard, a conventional family home. Do you own your own home? Are you renting?
No, we rent right now.
Okay. So, how are the taxes compared, say, to Philadelphia?
They tend to be higher than Philadelphia. Philadelphia
Really?
tends to have some lower taxes. But it depends on where in Philadelphia you're talking too, because Philadelphia has many different neighborhoods which have different tax levels.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. So where does Bensalem fit in all that? And do you get a sense from people that they're comfortable with the level of taxation, or is there frustration out in the community?
Well, I mean, I believe there's always frustration when people are forced to pay a tax for something, especially something they own, such as their home and property, under threat of losing said home and property if they don't pay it. So, I mean, property taxes are always a point of contention. I don't have the exact figure for the property taxes in Bensalem, so I can't really speak to where they fall in line with certain taxes in Philadelphia or surrounding area. But there's always room to reduce those taxes wherever possible.
Folks, if you're just joining us, Tim Main is on the line with us. He is running for the mayoralty of the great town, if you will, the parish of suburban Philadelphia, Bensalem, Pennsylvania, to be its mayor, its grand poobah, its chief water buffalo, its high exalted ruler. None of that is true, of course, but it's an interesting community because it is a suburb community, it's a bedroom community, if you will, to Philadelphia with industry and a direct proximity to New Jersey. Do you find out? I mean, New Jersey, on the other side of New Jersey, of course, is Trenton Camden, which is, God bless the people of Trenton Camden. The burdens they share. They're terribly run cities. Their ideas of economic development are the silver bullet kind. I think wasn't the big thing in Camden a number of years ago. They were going to build an aquarium, and people were going to come to this atrocious place because there was an aquarium. Wasn't that one of the great, if you will, monorail style frauds perpetuated upon the citizenry?
Well, to give them credit, they actually do have an aquarium that's right on the waterfront, and
Right.
it is nice from what I hear. I've never actually been there myself.
I think that's part of the problem. It's nice, but hard. Again, it's
yeah. They got the Battleship New Jersey there too, which you feel like you got to drive through windows up, doors locked to get there.
Hey, are you sure it's not there for security?
Yeah.
And again, I hate to be so glib, but again, these are communities for whom their state governments have grotesquely failed them. And by the way, check out Greg Mealy. He's running for governor of New Jersey. But is there much border competition for economic development? And does Bensalem have an economic development commissioner, or how are they pursuing economic development, if in fact they're even engaging?
Well, as far as the border dispute or border on the economic development with New Jersey, Bensalem doesn't interact directly with New Jersey. The closest bridges are in Bristol Township and down in Philadelphia. So there's really no direct interaction between Bensalem and New Jersey. As far as the economic development on the Bensalem side, that is definitely something that I would love to look into and see what we can do to, as I said earlier, to rebuild businesses, to bring new business in, and to build up the businesses we have.
Now, what's your philosophy on economic development? Is it something, do you, there's really two schools of thought: lower everyone's taxes, try to work the ways to lower everyone's costs, or to work deals with companies. What's your personal perspective on that?
My personal perspective is by lowering taxes and lowering everybody's taxes, and lowering and negating or getting rid of unneeded regulations on businesses, that the businesses will work to build because they'll want to be here. And if they want to be here, they'll build a better business than if it's one of these things where you just give them a tax break for, say, 10 years, and then on the 11th year, you bump their taxes up.
Right. It's amazing how short-sighted so many communities are in that respect. And try to deal from a position of strength, try and deal from a position of, the advantage. Now, you talked about, the trucking industry. I mean, that section of Philadelphia is really, or eastern Pennsylvania is one of the gateways to the entire Northeast, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of trucking that goes through the Northeast corridor of the country. And, you got ports in New York and all that. A lot of stuff comes in through New York ports. It has to go down through the Northeast, down towards the southern part of the country, through Pennsylvania, even to go out west. You'll see a lot of trucking heading out west on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and such. So, I mean, this area is a big hub not necessarily a hub, but a big corridor of freight movement.
Or in these cases, these days, the freight movement. Oh, wow, it's tough, and yet that side of Pennsylvania again has such a unique geographical advantage.
Yep.
With its positioning, is there? Does the town have a formal economic developer, as you're aware, or are they just sort of doing it on a piecemeal basis right now?
I am not aware of an economic developer, so I don't have any knowledge of one.
All right. Okay. And zoning issues. I mean, how is this a town that's challenging on zoning issues? Or do you sense flexibility?
Well, I think that they're stern on their zoning issues, but I always hope for flexibility. And I would hope that they would want to bring business back and increase business so that they would be flexible. But I do believe that they are more or less stern on their zoning.
Okay. Let's talk about the campaign itself then, the election itself. Your election, I believe, is this November, correct?
Yes.
So what type of activities have you engaged in to build name recognition, whether it be before the run in terms of community involvement or now that you're in the middle of what I imagine in most cities these days is a heated race?
Yep. Well, most of my platforming and campaigning has been done online. My Facebook page and my Twitter account have been very active throughout the entire process. I, other than the signature drive and all, I haven't really had an opportunity to be out at many events or to be out, door knocking. Aside from the signature collection, which is, of course, slated against third-party candidates and all. But I was very happy when I was doing the signature collection and doing the door knocking that not only did I have massive assistance from the local Bucks County Libertarian Party, but in talking to the people that signed the papers and all, and seeing what they thought and all, it made that community face-to-face connection, if you will. And a lot of people wished me very well. Even the ones that wouldn't sign my papers still wished me well, and wished me luck and all. So I mean, It really does show that we are a good community.
No, absolutely. And what kind of, while you're doing the door-to-door thing, it's really interesting because, you put your listening ears on, as my mom used to say. But what if they asked you questions, were they more issue-based or were they curious about what a libertarian was?
Most of the questions I got asked is, what is a libertarian? What do you believe in? What is this? What is that about it? And the thing that I say, or that I would tell a lot of the people, and they would kind of like go, huh, is I would say it's basically we believe in all your rights all the time, both fiscally conservative and fiscally responsible. And, we want you to be able to do what you want to do without, having to fear the government, so long as you're not preventing somebody else that same right.
Mm-hmm. Now, will you have an opportunity during October to engage in any debates?
Unfortunately not. It seems like there won't be any debates. I mean, there's not even a debate that the Democrat candidate is invited to my knowledge. So I don't think there'll be any debates this time around.
Have you thought about challenging them to one?
I have thought about it. It's just a matter of time. As far as I don't know if I'll have enough time between now and November 2nd.
It's always fun. You can just, to a large degree, they'll probably say no.
Yes.
And which, of course, you can then publicize, immensely. In fact, one of the fun things to do is and by the way, is the current mayor, the current incumbent, is he or she running again?
Yes, he is. And he has been mayor now 24 years.
Wow. Excellent.
Yes. Yes. So one of the things during my door knocking, one of the things I heard a lot from people that would sign my papers, we need term limits. So one of the big platform points that I've been pushing since I announced candidacy, or since I sought the nomination rather, is term limits in Bensalem Township.
24 years.
Yes.
That's crazy. Well, hey, you know what? Just as a suggestion, something that I like to do in my professional life a lot is get one of those little camera tripods and mount up your cell phone, turn on Facebook Live, walk right up to him at a town council meeting and say, I'd like to challenge you to a debate. And if he says no, then you'll know the measure of the man.
Yep.
Because one of the things I love about being a libertarian is that we're right. So it's really easy to debate as a libertarian because, well, you're right. And so all of the different issues that we've been talking about tonight, they can be taken down a peg.
Yes.
If he agrees to do it, great. If he doesn't, which is all the more likely, then you've got him on video equivocating, being the weak-kneed, if you will. What did Joe Biden like to say? Pony soldier? Wasn't that the term? Yeah. It's something like that.
A dog-faced pony soldier.
John Gapso, the guy behind the big board. So how? By the way, in talk about, if you will, you mentioned the signature gathering process. How many signatures did you need, and is this a party-based race?
It is, and I needed 140 signatures minimum to submit my paperwork to the county. When I turned in my papers, it was well over 230 signatures.
Excellent, excellent, crush it. Because
Yes.
they're not, did they review your signatures? Are you aware of any efforts at skullduggery and tomfoolery?
To my surprise, there were no challenges on any of the signatures. And I had, in the interim, I had moved. So in June, we moved from one side of the township to the other side of the township. And I thought for sure that the signatures that I collected at my old address were going to be challenged in some way.
Wow. Okay. Now, the incumbent is a Republican or a Democrat?
The incumbent is a Republican.
Wow. Okay. Right outside of Philly, huh?
Yep.
Wow. Who knew? And the Democratic candidate, what is their background? You need not mention names, but
She is, as I understand, she is a retired police officer and a longtime resident of Bensalem.
and any clear, has that candidate staked any ground on any issues that would differentiate her from the incumbent, or is it more of the same?
Well, it's more of the typical Democrat, big government, more spending, more bureaucracy.
Now, has the defund the police, and she's running as a retired police officer, has the defund the police made it to Bensalem, or is that?
I have not heard anybody use defund the police up here in Bensalem. Again, like I said earlier, the police interaction up here has been relatively positive. So I have not heard anybody calling for defund the police here.
We can get a couple of radical libertarians up there in pronto and just start putting out in the police paperwork on lawns if you like. We're happy to help.
Yep.
You want to rip things up a little bit, get things going. Well, now, okay, of course, I have to ask you about fundraising. Have you been engaged in fundraising, and are you looking? Have you printed up material? Are you sharing that with the community?
So I haven't done any fundraising here. I've been kind of. I started this as a statement to show people that they have a choice. Just because you've had the same mayor for 24 years doesn't mean that you're stuck between him or a Democrat. There is always a choice. And so I wanted to show people that they had a choice. That was why I got involved in this and why I ran. So I haven't done any real fundraising or anything like that. I've been basically just doing this kind of with the help and support of the local Libertarian Party, the help and support of my family, my wife, and just kind of like a grassroots push.
Okay. Are you going to do as I like to call it, the Go TV, until I one day figured it out that it meant get out the vote? Are you going to be doing a get out the vote effort?
It's definitely something worth looking into. I haven't really considered it one way or the other, to be honest.
Okay. Well, at the end of every show, we have something called the shameless self-promotion. And we encourage people to engage in shameless self-promotion. I got to ask you, are you accepting campaign contributions?
I am actually not. Like I said, I want to do this as a grassroots push without really fundraising.
Okay. And I'm curious. I mean, if folks offered you money, would you accept it?
Well, I mean, yeah, I could always create literature and do things like that if people freely offered the money to the campaign.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, tell folks how they can reach you and reach out to your campaign.
Well, you can reach out to me either through my Facebook page or my Twitter profile, and I have a email address. It's tmainlibertarian@comcast.net. You can email me there. I check that email very regularly. In fact, if you message me on Facebook, I'm less likely to respond in a timely manner than if you email me. So the best way to get in touch with me is the email, which is tmainlibertarian@comcast.net.
Now, do you have a page dedicated to the campaign?
I do not. We were actually in our local Bucks County Libertarian Party. We're working to revamp the website, and we were going to put up a page for the campaign as well.
Okay. All right. So, John, you got that then? Maybe can you throw up that email address?
Give me a second.
Yeah, absolutely. So November 2nd is your race.
Yes.
Um, and this is just a regular, this is not a special election. This is a regular term.
Yep. Yeah.
So this guy's going for 28 years. Is
Yes.
this,
Yes.
does he treat this as a full-time job? Or
He does. Yeah. He started the mayorship when he retired from his actual work, and he treats it as a full-time job.
so he started this after he retired, and now
Yeah,
he's been doing it for 24 years.
I believe he was 50 something when he actually on the township website. There's a page devoted to him, and it tells his story of when he started and whatnot. And it's like, wow, like I can't contemplate wanting to stay in office that long. Well, I mean, I understand wanting to stay in office that long, but why when you get a stagnation of ideas when you don't have change in leadership?
Ooh. Yeah, that's something. 24 years on, because not much in the world has changed in the last 24 years. He may be the only mayor I know that was there before the internet and after the internet. Who started out on a flip phone, or one of those
No,
suitcase phones.
he started out with a telegraph.
Wow. How many votes roughly do you think you need to win?
Well, I would say probably 15 to 20,000, maybe.
Wow. Okay. And is turnout usually pretty good?
Turnout is usually pretty good. I don't think there's that low of turnout in this area.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, Tim, thanks for joining us tonight. I hope you'll let us know how the election goes. Keep us in the loop. If you do schedule any events, let us know. I want to also put out to the crowd at large. I had the opportunity this past week to attend campaign training. I participated in some of the classes with the elite shock troops that are, in fact, the Libertarian Party National Training Organization, if you will, and it was amazing. If you get a chance in the future, when we do this again, make sure you sign up. I know you. I was there, so I know you weren't.
Yep. I definitely plan to. One of the people that has been integral at helping me, Allison, she went there and she brought back a lot of things from that, and she was talking about it on Monday. And it's like, next time they have it, I'm going.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Everything was great. The communications course was great. I only went to about 3 or 4 classes. I got there late. I was at a mini riot the night before. That's another story for another time. But and then drove from essentially Boston down to Atlantic City. But Kyra Schultz had an amazing course about messaging and crisis communication, and it was the balls. I can't think of a better term for it right now, but it was absolutely the balls. So they did a wonderful, wonderful job. Also upcoming in November, actually the weekend after your election, the state of New York will be holding a Liberty seminar, a Liberty weekend, and we're going to have more about that next week. We're going to get Tony DeRazio, who's running it, in conjunction with, as vice chair of the Empire State Libertarian Party, to do a little bit of special on it, and we'll either do that Monday or next Friday. But very much in the similar vein as to what Liz Terwilliger did in Pennsylvania. And each of the states are starting to do these Liberty weekends, and they're great, great ideas, because there's a group of libertarians around the nation who can make some of these and contribute. And yet it also brings, when you have a large state like the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or the state of New York, it brings together people from all over the organization in a less competitive format than, shall we say, the convention. And it's really more of a collegial event with a lot of hands-on courses. And
that type of event can wake up the libertarians that don't realize they're libertarians even.
There you go. And we certainly need more of that.
Yep.
There's a lot of people out there, and that's why these local candidacies are so important. There's a lot of folks out there who, well, they need someone to articulate points in a manner that speaks to them and connects the dots and presents the libertarian philosophy of the party, the movement, to them as the answer to the words or ideas they've been struggling to connect. Not knowing perhaps that something like the LP exists, the libertarian philosophy exists, our statement of principles, our non-aggression principle, our platform speaks so well to their beliefs, and they just haven't been able to connect with it. So it's our responsibility as people who campaign or work as I do behind the scenes to give them that opportunity to connect. And that's what's so important about, for example, Liz's event and what's going to happen in New York. And again, we'll have more on that. So again, Tim, thanks for joining us tonight. Nothing but the best. And understand, and I always like to close this portion of the show with this. All props, if you will. Much respect to folks who run as candidates. Doing what you're doing, I firmly believe, is, other than acting in your nation's defense, and I emphasize defense, is the second most patriotic act you can do as an American. And some of us don't believe as much in if you will, the notion of a federal state like that than others. But in terms of your stewardship for the people that you're in community with, which is what's so important, running as a libertarian, spreading the message is an amazing act, I think, of kindness and grace. And hats off to you for doing it. And again, I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you, Pat. It's been a pleasure.
Folks, you've been watching and listening to Candidates Corner on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian National Committee. Whitney Bilyeu serving as chair. Always a big thanks to John Gabso. He's on the big board. Rumor has it that he'll be one of the influencers, the forces, if you will, on some election night coverage that's being ginned up right now for people, to watch nationally as we cover all the local races that are going on.
Stay tuned, Pat, with that. I'll drop a name, and it's Kara Schultz. That's all I'll say.
That's all you'll say. The god, as we refer to her around here, the goddess. I'm your host, Pat Ford. It is a singular honor to spend quality time with people like Tim. And literally at this point, it's got to be in excess of 100 candidates that we've spent time with over the last year and a half. All amazing people, all with their own unique stories, their own perspective, and each of them having incredible impact on giving people back their rights and ultimately fighting for the ultimate minority. And of course, that's the individual. Folks, we'll hopefully see you Monday night. Have a great weekend. Listen, it's weeks to go. It's hammer time. If you've got time this weekend, find a local candidate and let's get to work. Good night.